Hello, hello, hello. Once again, John Birch here, johnabirch.com, with the Jab Blab. This evening, we are talking about and continuing our series on the breakdown before the breakup, relationship fundamentals, and your personality is our topic tonight. So let's get right into this right away. We're going to wait to see if a few people get in here before I use some personal examples, see if I get somebody to come in and talk to us about their personality. But all that I'll put out right now in this particular topic, in this particular series, is all about relationships and love. So if you're in a relationship, if you're just coming out of a relationship, if you're looking for a relationship, all of this information will apply to you, whether it's a work relationship, the relationship you have with your local grocery store clerk, your coworkers, your family members, all of those people that we have relationships, even the relationship you have with yourself. If you understand these characteristics that I'll talk about tonight and these fundamentals, you can drastically improve your relationships. In fact, that is my promise to people. If you take me on as a coach, if you listen to any of my teachings, I will provide you information that if you apply in your life, it will fundamentally change your life. There's no doubt about it. The hundreds of people that I've worked with through the personality system that I use, the thousands of people that I've presented this to, all would agree that it changed their life in dramatic ways. So let's dive into this. We're going to talk about relationship fundamentals and your personality. What are some relationship fundamentals? Well, from my perspective and what I teach and learned the hard way, because I had to realize I didn't have these fundamental skills. I had to realize that I didn't grow up in the traditional kind of thought process of family and getting the good lessons passed down, how to be a good man, how to be a good husband, what that takes, what that looks like. I didn't have those examples as a child, and grew up with some pretty bad habits and some really some skill sets that were lacking. So the first thing when it comes to relationships, you have to understand that it begins with you. What you bring to your relationship. I like to use the acronym SELF. You bring yourself to the relationship. So SELF, the self that you bring. All of our relationships are anchored within. All of our conflicts, all our belief systems, all our values, all resort back into us. And from that, we look at it through the personality lens for this particular series. And what I coach from, I teach from the personality needs. So when you look at the SELF acronym, I teach it's the social you, the social self, the emotional self, and the lifestyle, the way you live, and lastly, the faith, the things that you believe, not necessarily religious, but overall things that you believe. Hello, Abby. How you doing this evening? You're welcome to come on in, join the conversation. Just getting started here a couple moments ago. I'm just going through relationship fundamentals, and I began with the self. So looking at the social self, how do you interact? Are you extroverted, introverted? We look at those aspects in personality, especially through the Myers-Briggs system. They judge on that scale or evaluate on that scale, really, rather. So your social self, how do you interact with others? Then there's the emotional self. How is it that you behave emotionally? Are you dependent, codependent, independent? We have all these variables and terms that we use. But basically, how emotional are you when it comes to relationships and what you bring to your relationships? How do you live? That's the next one, is your lifestyle. Is there organization? Is there structure? Everything in its place? Or is it stacks everywhere? Shoes can be in the living room. Cap can be off the toothpaste. No big deal. Type of lifestyle. How do you live? Makes a big difference in your relationships. Also applies to our workstations. If we have a work office, how you maintain or are expected to maintain that space is critical to your relationship. Lastly is the faith piece. It's what we believe, really. It comes down to our belief systems. So, of course, the religion aspect or the spirituality aspect comes into this. People tend to get tripped up on this word faith. I want you to understand that faith is just the things that you believe. That's it. The belief system that you have, the values you possess. all play into this self that you present to the relationship. So the thing is, when we meet someone and they, we find attracted, there's chemistry, there's some things there that we really like this person, we start to form a friendship perhaps. We generally, and you'll see this a lot in the dating world, we generally go in with this false self, right? We don't want to show our deeper level of intimacy. We don't want to open up the closets right away and expose ourselves. We stay very guarded and we present a false self. And people fall in love with each other, false self, right? We admire that false self. We're like, oh, he's so kind, or she's so tender. Those type of things come into play for our relationships. And then 6 months, 6 years later, we look at the person and go, who the hell are you? And why am I with you? Because that false self tends to go away. We get more relaxed and we feel protected. We feel comfortable. And if we don't have the skill sets to understand that there's common ground, we don't have the skill sets to communicate and express our true selves from the beginning, or to accommodate for those true selves as they come out and become relevant to the relationship, our relationships fall apart. That simple. So they become polarized. We lose interest, and then we say we love the person, but we're no longer in love anymore. So that's the whole point of this program, this course this month of focusing on from the personality aspects of trying to teach people about getting it broke down before they break up, before they end the relationship, before they end that marriage. Let's talk about some fundamentals. Let's talk about some skill sets. Let's talk about the personality needs and see if we can make some adjustments. And the first thing that I teach is come back to that common interest. What was it that brought you together? What was it that, had that common interest in each other? What was there that you're like, man, there's just something about this person. They enjoy the same things I do. They have similar values that I do. They behave the same way I do. I absolutely love that about this person. And the cliche of you complete me, right? So we tend to enjoy that, getting that common interest built up. And on top of those common interests, we fall in love, right? We get this emotional attachment. And I love the Sternberg triangle of love, his theory of triangle of love. And he talks about 3 components of love, and those are passion, intimacy, and commitment. So each of the personality temperaments views love in a different way. They have their own specific viewpoint, belief system, value towards this concept of love, romance, intimacy. They have their own particular buzzwords. Really quickly, before I go much further into the fundamentals, let me back up a moment and I'll go over what we call the characteristics of these individual temperaments. So in the system that I use, we have Nathan Bryce's personality instrument, and it's the Insight Learning Foundation that he is the head of, the creator of, and he wrote a book called Standing Naked in the Shower, which deals with personality temperaments. When we look at his system, we see, and use his system rather, we see personality as a spectrum. So when we're looking at someone's personality, you have all 4 temperaments inside of you, in your brain, in your mind, the way you operate in your life. You have all 4 temperaments. However, they come on a percentage scale out of 100 points or 100%. There's one that you operate out of the most, that's most comfortable, or what I say, like you resonate with the most. So I'd like to describe those to you. First, we have the greens, and in the system we have greens, oranges, golds, and blues. And the greens, they're curious, they're independent people, they're logical, they're bookish, they're very scientific and factual. They thrive on intellectual means to get through the world. Next, we have the oranges. These are the active folks. These are the courageous folks. They're skillful. They're competitive. They love a challenge. It's not about getting the trophy. It's about dominating you. bottom line. They love that, being entrepreneurs, being daring and bold and active and exciting. Next, we have their polar opposites is the gold, which is the reliable temperament, the organized temperament. They're stable, they're orderly. They have these things going on in which they bring the structure to our society, and punctuality is a huge thing for them. Lastly is the opposites of the greens, which is our blue temperament. These folks are perceptive, they're warm, poetic, they're compassionate, they have a lot of spirituality to them, they tend to be very artistic. So when we look at each of these personality temperaments, we get to see how they interact and react in this thing called relationships and how they live in the world of love. So looking at the green temperament, greens are the type of people that they'll tell you I love you if they do, and they will love you until it changes, and they'll tell you when it changes. So they could go for months and maybe even years without really conveying that concept of I love you again in those ways. So that can be very frustrating if you're in love with a green, because they're not going to tend to show their love in the very wordy, romantic type of way on a regular basis, but they're going to be in love with you. Next is the orange. Orange view love in relationships as an adventure. They may come and go. Again, oranges see things as a challenge, so they may be involved in what I call the relationship a month club, where they just keep moving because they lose interest. Oranges are all in or all out. That's their dynamic. Is they're either all in and they love it, they're in it, or they're just completely, or they can get all out. They're just all out of it, and they'll tap out. So, and it's up to them. They will change their mind on a whim. So the next is the gold. Gold's very dependable. They rely on the relationship certainty. They want to have a consistent, loving, lifelong partner. And then lastly is our blues, and blues are our romantics. They want the romance, the wine and dine, the nice vacations. They want to feel this sense of love in their lives. And they will, they're very tolerant people, and they're mediators, they're nurturers. So they're very kind and loving people naturally. So let's go back to some of the fundamentals. We got about a third of the way through the list of what I consider our fundamentals. Next on the list is trust. Trust builds off from that love around, you build trust through integrity and respect, through time. You build that trust by spending time to get to know these people, get to know the person that you're falling in love with, share the passions, open the intimacy. And when we talk about intimacy, we're not talking about just the bedroom or the sexual intimacy. We're talking about, hey, this is where I grew up. This is what I went through as a kid. These are my parents, my grandparents. This is where my family's from. We're talking about all those things. I went to college at this place. I dream of doing these things. That's really intimacy in a relationship. And those things have to be continually built, continually thrive to stay alive. And those build commitment. So from that commitment builds trust, and vice versa. They kind of work together. Next on the list that I have for our fundamentals is communication. And from the communication aspect, we look at how we communicate. In that, of course, our personality plays a huge role in this piece of the fundamentals. But this is really, you can get into, passive aggressive, assertive are the three main categories that I teach from communication. And the thing that I think is crucial to understand in relationships and dealing with people is there's a difference between verbal communication and nonverbal communication. And you can learn a lot more. You can hear a lot more, perceive a lot more from people through nonverbal communication. So, you see the joke videos on YouTube and Facebook memes and things like that where, a husband will say, hey, honey, can I go watch the game with the boys? And she says, fine, do whatever you want. and if you go off the words alone, then you're gonna be in a lot of trouble when you get back home or maybe the next day. Because there's something else going on in her mind that she wanted you around. Maybe she had something planned. Maybe you've gone out quite a few nights, whatever it might be. There's some underlying tone and some nonverbal communication being conveyed there. And I know we make light of it, but there is reality to that. And it works both ways. I think that's just an easy example to share in how we communicate. Next on the fundamentals, when it comes to relationship and relationship goals or relationships overall, we talk about what I call the GRRS of a relationship, the GRRS. So this is our goals. Like, why? What's our purpose of being in a relationship? Is it a working relationship? Is it a partnership? Are you a grocery store clerk? That's the level of our relationship. Is a transaction, a business transaction? Are we building a family? Are we just friends with benefits? What is the particular goal of us being in a relationship together? Next is the roles. What roles do we play in our relationships? Do you play the dad role, the mom role? Do you play there's all types of roles that we can go into. And that'll probably just be another blab at this point. Where we're going to talk about these GRRS of relationships, because there's a lot of stressors that come along with this as well. Next is responsibilities. So the responsibilities is huge in relationship, to truly outline what are you responsible for? What part do you play in responsibility? How responsible are you overall? I've talked to a number of couples, especially young couples, who one might be a gamer, loves video games, and sometimes that gets in the way of us being responsible, cleaning the house, stable job, those type of things, are set aside sometimes because of this little hobby or passion. So those rolled all together, the GRRS, create our expectations of the relationship. So the GRRS create your expectations. What do you want out of the relationship from the other person? And the last thing I want to touch on really quickly for this particular segment is to share that each of these, again, have a need. And Tony Robbins, I think, conveys this very simply in the needs of the personality. He talks about the 4 needs of the personality, which directly correlate to this system, and which I believe he uses the DISC assessment in his work. I prefer this particular method because it does see you as a spectrum. You have all of these traits. You can pull off them to thrive and survive throughout your life, and to cope through things. And if you can pull off the assets and the liabilities of those, and I'll do another blab on that here soon, as well as what are those assets and liabilities dealing with personality. So looking at the gold person, Tony Robbins describes it as a simple word is certainty. The certainty in your life, the certainty in your relationship, you want to feel a sense of certainty. Oranges want variety. It's the polar opposite. They want variety. They want things to be mixed up. And the greens, they want significance. They want to feel significant in their lives. And lastly, the blue are the connection people. Again, they're the romantic type of personality temperament. So with that, very quickly, I'd like to go back and kind of touch on a few of these and share a few insights as far as when we look at the self in the fundamentals that you bring to your relationship. Your personality plays a gigantic role. So if you want more information about taking your personality assessment, reach out to me. You can go to johnabirch.com, go to the resources and click on the contact us page, fill that out, shoot that over to me. I'm going to have a program coming up very soon for some options for coaching at the end of this week with this particular program. You'll be able to jump into that, grab your significant other, go through the program, and just become truly enlightened about your personality and how it plays a massive role in your relationship. So going back really quickly, we talk about how our personality impacts the fundamentals. The thing that I teach in this course and I'll teach throughout this series is understanding how these traits impact communication, trust, love, romance, sex, the intimacy piece. The common interests come from your personality temperament. The goals that you desire, the expectations you have upon your relationship. So when we talk about relationships breaking down before we break up, it's imperative to understand that it's simply you've lost that loving feeling, right? As we like to jokingly say, but it's a great Top Gun scene. But we basically have become polarized. We've forgotten what the common interest was that brought us together, and we've no longer believe or feel or think that our needs are being met. This is where we get the grass is greener on the other side. People cheat because they want their needs filled, plain and simple. You want your needs filled. You want shelter. You want clothing. You want food. Those are some of the Maslow needs. When we go to the self-actualization and you start talking about the needs of the personality, it's important to understand that each of those have a specific need or a set of needs that they're trying to fill. And if you don't get that, one, from yourself, and two, from the person you're with, you're not going to be happy. Bottom line, it's that simple. So when you're in a relationship and perhaps it's going south, you're having some stress and some conflict, the greatest thing you can do is step back and ask yourself two questions. One, am I meeting my partner's needs? Am I getting them fulfilled? Am I meeting their personality needs? And two, am I getting my needs met? If you can answer those two questions and then recognize where that problem is at and what's missing, that missing piece, what's breaking down, then you can save that relationship and you can revive it. You can bring the passion back. You can just it comes back and it doesn't have to leave. You don't have to give up. You don't have to break up. So that's my goal with this particular program in the month of love here in Valentine's month. Wishing everybody a great night and loving relationships. Thanks for listening. Thanks for catching us on the replay if you did. And I appreciate each of you. Reach out to me. Let me know if I can assist you in any way. Thank you very much. Have a great night.